your side, looking awesome. Thank you so much. All right, welcome everyone. It is another fabulous, amazing, though slippery and icy week here in Edmonton, Canada, where we are hosting our last in our SDG series. This week focusing on gender. So this week it's youth perspectives for a more sustainable world, youth, gender, form. So we're talking about transformational change, especially when we talk about gender. Again, my name is Sarah. I'm from the Center for Global Education. I have my wonderful colleagues here from the Alberta Council for Global Cooperation. Thomas will be joining us in a bit, his colleague Blessing, and then one of our guest speakers, Lisa, as well, as they share with us their thoughts and the work that they're doing on gender and what does it mean today and how do we talk about it. And so often I've been hearing conversations where in the school that I'm in, that gender isn't an issue anymore. And it's such an interesting thing to hear because I think I see it. And so maybe sometimes we need to just think of new ways of how do we perceive and acknowledge and question the things we see as normal, but maybe that are still have that subtext and those unconscious messages that we've accepted. Anyways, I can't wait to have this conversation. It's going to be an amazing day. Before we get started, I'd like to say that I'm joining you from Treaty 6 territory, which is a traditional meeting grounds, gathering space, traveling route of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux people, and that we're joining from all over the world on this virtual platform. And so I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples from all the lands we're joining on today. I see our friends from Turkey are here. I know that we have friends that are signed up from Brazil and Bangladesh and Scotland and Lebanon and the US, and hopefully our friends from Trinidad are going to join. They're so lovely. And then from all across Canada as well. So Edmonton, Calgary, Crow's Nest Pass, Canmore, who else did I see on the call? Oh, anyways, there's lots here in this room, and there's many more who will be joining us later on YouTube. So I want to acknowledge them. Oh, we have Bayview Glen here from Ontario. Wonderful to have them as well. And so I want to acknowledge that even though we're all joining from lands across the world and across Canada, that we do a land acknowledgement to really reaffirm our commitment to the responsibility of improving relationships between nations and our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. And from coast to coast to coast to continent and continents in between, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation peoples that call our own lands home. So welcome, Thomas. We have a big room today. Oh, we have some more friends joining us from Calgary just now. So we have a big room who are excited to talk about gender. It's interesting how we started the series and it was a small but intimate crew. And now we're ending on gender. And it's this nice, large, big room full of, I'm sure, boisterous voices and lots of questions. And I'm just so excited to bring everyone today and end on this note. How are you feeling about the series so far? Thomas. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Is my connection okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you now.
Oh, good. Sorry, how am I feeling about the series so far?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's been wonderful. It's been an exciting time to hear from students from across Alberta and from across the world, and really looking forward to today's session on gender and digging into gender dynamics, gender inequality and equality, and how we move forward on some of these things, how we take action in our own communities to make the world a more inclusive, a more equitable place. And for me, it's just been really energizing to hear from each of you, to see your questions. So I know there'll be more of that today. And I'm not sure, Sarah, at this point, did you want me to talk a bit about ACGC as well?
That would be great. And I'm going to, as you're speaking, I'm going to show our live activity for the day. So if you are joining from your school or your home, if you have a mobile device, it would be great. This is our live Google sort of activity that we're running at the same time, talking about all the SDGs, what's your priority, what are your barriers. These are what we're going to need when we go ahead next week and we start writing the report that sort of brings everything together. So as you're listening to Thomas and the awesome work that they're doing there, feel free to fill this in as well. Go ahead, Thomas.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, for those of you who I have not had a chance to see on the screen, I know I see familiar names and faces, so that's exciting after 3 sessions, and this being our 4th and final. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Thomas. I work with ACGC, the Alberta Council for Global Cooperation. And I actually just moved from Calgary, Treaty 7 territory to New Brunswick, outside of St. John, the land governed by peace and friendship treaties here with the Mi'kmaq and Maliseets and other Indigenous communities. So I also want to acknowledge the land that I now live on and now work on. But with ACGC, I'm a global citizenship education specialist, and part of ACGC's mandate as an organization that works with about 45 different organizations throughout Alberta, all doing international development work. But ACGC is really, really concerned with and passionate about helping folks like you, students and teachers and educators, learn more about global citizenship and how we become more aware of our role and our responsibilities as global citizens, and also thinking about and taking action for a more gender inclusive, a more gender equitable world, and creating spaces that are equitable and equal for all folks, not just depending on gender, but on other identities as well. So very excited to be here with you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I won't say more. I'll introduce the speakers a bit later, but I really want to give lots of time for conversation with our presenters. And so at this point, that's what I'll say, and welcome everyone. Really, really happy to see you.
All right, I'm happy to have you throw right over to Blessing. For anyone who is joining us here in the room, Blessing said she was very happy to sort of, as you have questions, you can raise your hand. There's the little reaction buttons. You can write them in the chat, and we'll sort of intercede. If it's really like ties into what she's talking about at the moment, we'll be like, hey, there's this great question. So don't feel like you're interrupting. Today is about you, and you. Blessing understands gender inequity and the SDGs, and so she wants to make sure that you get today out of it what you need to. So feel free to reach out with your questions, your comments, and we'll make sure that she's able to address them. And then Thomas, over to you to introduce
Absolutely.
your colleague.
Absolutely. Yeah. Blessing is the learning and engagement manager at ACGC. So she's a colleague of mine, and I know she'll love to hear questions from you and engage with you in conversation. She has lots of experience working in gender mainstreaming in international context, and is very passionate about gender equality and equity. And she lives and works in Edmonton. And so, Blessing, I'll hand it over to you. Feel free to introduce yourself further and move into what you'd like to share with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Thomas and Sarah. I'm so excited and humbled to be here today. I'm just going to share my screen in a bit. Although this is the last session of the series, it doesn't mean it's the least important, right? Okay, so today we're going to talk about gender equality. And like Thomas has mentioned, ACGC, or Alberta Council of Global Cooperation, focuses around international development and ensuring that Canadians participate in having a better society and being better global citizens. So gender equality is a human rights issue. And usually you find that in most of the newspaper articles today, it's an everyday issue when you find some of these issues that are highlighted. So here I took or grabbed some newspaper articles that kind of mentioned some of those issues. And mentioning, issues around menstrual products, issues around how women and girls have, used some of the social media in terms of getting help. So what is gender equality? Gender equality is when people of all genders have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. But it is also crucial for us to be able to define important terms when we are talking about gender equality. So I will just give a brief overview of some of those important definitions to tackle when we are talking about gender equality. Sex. Sex refers to a set of individuals' biological attributes, such as male and female. And while it's gender, gender is socially constructed characteristics of women, men, and gender diverse people. What is gender identity? Gender identity is a name that we use to convey our gender based on our deeply held internal sense of self. Identities typically fall into binary, for example, men, women, or non-binary. And then we have what are called gender roles. So gender roles in society means how we are expected to act, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves based upon our assigned sex. But does it always mean that these gender roles are positive? No, we find that some of the gender roles can lead to harmful gender stereotypes. For example, about how girls and boys should act, look, and feel. And continuing, you find that when we're talking about gender equality, people usually interchange using gender equality and gender equity. But then what do we mean when we say gender equality? Gender equality is when when people of all genders have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. So it's about the sameness. When we are talking about equity, gender equity puts a focus around fairness. So this means distributing either resources or providing the specific services that speak to the needs of different groups of people. So when we are talking about equity, we are talking about fairness. Basically, equity leads to equality. So others would ask, why does gender equality matter? It is a fundamental human right, and as such, it is essential for economic prosperity. It reduces poverty. Everyone benefits from it. It also promotes sustainable national, political, social, cultural, and economic development. You find that in most cases, women and girls have been significantly marginalized. And this has resulted in issues of violence against women and girls, either in the private sphere or in the public sphere. And as such, gender equality prevents violence against women and girls. I will just play a short clip on gender equality.
Zoom is not playing nice right now with the when you log in with the presentation. Did you select share? Let me just quickly see if I can get it to share from my side.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
Sorry, I was not. Let me quick. Or if you could open it separately on a tab in your on your computer and then share that tab, it might work a little bit better than sharing through slides.
Okay.
There's just been a new sort of update that's changed how Zoom works.
That's okay.
See who can get there first. Yeah, we might have to just.
Okay, I am there, so I'll just share my screen.
Give it a try. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
No. The trick will be, will we be able to hear it?
Okay.
Yeah. But there's subtitles. So we're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't hear the voices either. Would you, Blessing, like to speak alongside the video? It might, you could read
the audio is not sharing. Okay.
The audio is not sharing. So if you wanted to
okay.
read, we can read the subtitles, but would you also like to?
Okay, that's fine. I can stop it here.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so basically it shows an example of how a female or a woman within the school system wanted to be a coach, and because she was a woman, she was denied to coach the soccer team. But after some intervention, eventually she was allowed to participate and coach the soccer team, which went on to win various awards. And it also resulted in changes within the school policy and system that then allowed opportunities for both men and women to be coaches for the soccer team. I will just continue sharing my my slides. Apologies for that. So speaking of gender equality within the international development spectrum, we talk about gender equality, and it falls under Sustainable Development Goal number 5 in the Sustainable Development Goals. So the Sustainable Development Goals are what Canada and other 192 UN states adopted in 2015 as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And they set an ambitious goals of 17 goals, but within those goals, you find that gender equality is integrated within all of these sustainable development goals. That is, although it is a standalone in goal number 5, you find that all of the 17 sustainable development goals speak to issues around gender equality. And some of those targets that have been identified within SDG 5 include ending all forms of discrimination against women and girls everywhere, eliminating violence against women and girls in the public and private spheres, eliminating harmful practices such as child and early and forced marriage, and in other parts of the world where they still practice harmful traditional practices such as female genital mutilation. The target is also to eliminate that and recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work. and ensure women's full and effective participation. So these are just some of the targets that have been set within the SDG 5 on gender equality. And just some quick facts to share with you. In some of the low-income countries, for every 100 boys who continue their education after high school, only 55 girls do the same. Imagine that's a huge difference. And the impact, imagine the impact that will have when they integrate into the economy and into the society, how then, women or girls will be left behind in comparison to their counterparts or boys who would have continued with their education. And then on average, women in the world spend more than twice as many hours as men doing unpaid care work. And survey after survey finds that parents are more likely to teach their sons core breadwinning skills like how to build credit and invest their money. And again, the issue around harmful practices that we had mentioned, such as child marriage, still the childhood of 15 million girls under the age of 18 every single year. And then about in 39 countries, they still have laws, discriminatory laws that mean a daughter cannot inherit the same proportion of assets as a son. And worldwide, 1 in 3 women and girls will experience violence or abuse in their lifetime. So coming back to Canada's context, so these are some of the policies and frameworks and awareness raising campaigns that are there. So we have the Women and Gender Equality Ministry, which monitors and measures progress on gender equality. And some of the areas that it measures include education and skills development, economic participation and prosperity, leadership and democratic participation, gender-based violence across to justice, poverty reduction, health and well-being. And as well, Government of Canada uses the gender-based analysis plus. This is an analytical tool or process which helps them ascertain the resources that women, men, and gender diverse people need, and as such, how they will be able to provide policies, programs, and initiatives that speak to the needs of women, men, and gender diverse people. We also have an Equal Pay Act that came into force August 31, meaning that women and men are paid equal pay for equal amount of work. And then Canada was also one of the first countries to sign and ratify the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, so the CEDAW. And we also have the Beijing Platform of Action. This is the global blueprint on advancing gender equality, and it has been in effect since 1995. And Canada has been committed to achieving the objectives of the Beijing Platform of Action. We also have campaigns on the 4th week of September each year, which is Gender Equality Week. And right now we are in the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which was spanning from 25 November and ending on 10 December. And Canada also does awareness raising campaigns during this time. And the one Billion Rising campaign. Again, this is a campaign against on violence against women and girls, coming from the statistics that 1 in every 3 women faces violence in their lifetime. And then the other one is on the international lens, the Global Affairs Canada has a feminist approach where it focuses on ensuring that whatever assistance they provide to other countries or that are in need in terms of developing or towards international development, they use that feminist approach, but ensuring that both women and girls get the necessary resources and services that are required to promote development. So one of the action areas in this feminist international assistance policy is the gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. So these are some of the frameworks and awareness raising campaigns that Canada partakes in. So then one would ask, in light of all this, how would I take action, to promote gender equality? So one way is to, participate in campaigns like the campaigns that I've mentioned. And, these days, there's a lot of use of, on social media. Some of these campaigns are done online. So participating is either in person or also on these campaigns online. Another way is, for example, to shop responsibly. Just when we started this session, Sarah was talking about how, women are affected by climate change, greater. And you find that, when they say shop responsibly, some of the probably habits, changing some of our habits, like if you are going to a grocery store, instead of, utilizing the plastic bags, probably carry your recyclable bag to the shop. So you're doing or exercising, doing your part to conserve the environment. And as such, it also means that we are not putting a burden on our environment and in essence, not having it impact the groups that are mostly marginalized. The other way is to teach girls their worth. So, instead of saying, you know what, you are a girl, you can't do this, you want to be a doctor, you can't be a doctor, you want to be, no, this is a boys field, etc. No, teach girls their worth, and also exercise your political rights. If you are at an age where you're eligible to vote, vote. And if, there are also female candidates, vote for female candidates, if they speak to what, the needs are for the community. Explore gender roles from different communities. And like we said, gender is about the social constructs or characteristics of a society, right? So these are socially constructed roles. So they may be different from one community to another. So it would be good, if you want to have an understanding about gender equality and how to promote it, just exploring some of these gender roles from the different communities and contexts. Sharing the care. So again, we have talked about, especially, during this pandemic, most people have been utilizing their homes more or spending more time in their homes. And in the pandemic, it has been ascertained that, or rather, they have named that there is in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is also a shadow pandemic, which is like violence against women and girls. But this is because of the more time that is spent indoors, etc. But we also find that women share most of the burden of the unpaid care work. So sharing some of those household chores, etc., within the household ensures gender equality. Respecting the choices of others, just knowing that we are all equal and have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities, and as such, we should respect each other's choices. Mixing boys and girls when sitting up in the classroom and for sports activities. So within our classroom settings, instead of separating our boys and our girls, mixing them up, if there are projects to be done, mixing them up so that they are able to carry out the projects together, and challenging as well what it means to be a man. Sometimes like, you're a man, you're a boy, why are you crying? Boys don't cry. But challenging that notion, because at the end, as a man, you grow up from a boy, you grow up to a man, and you're unable to share or express your feelings freely just because of that societal gender stereotype that men and boys do not cry. I think with this, I will end here and entertain questions. But unfortunately, I really wanted you to see that video. But anyway, I hope you have learned one or two things around gender equality. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Blessing. We've had a few comments and questions come up, I see, in our chat here. So where to jump in? And anyone, if you have a question, you can raise your hand in the reaction section, or you can just type it, or you can unmute and we'll call out to you. Any of those will work. But why don't we start with the Camrose has put in a question about gender equity and equality experienced by Indigenous women in Canada versus non-Indigenous women, I would assume, or maybe just unique experiences to Indigenous women, and speaking towards that.
Okay. So thank you so much for that question. So yeah, if you remember, in the question is there a difference in gender equality experienced by Indigenous women? So like we said, there are various gender identities, and gender is not only the identity that that is there, but people have different social identities. So, already when we are saying Indigenous women, there are different identities there. The first one being, this is an Indigenous person, and they are also a woman. So those are the different identities. So is there a difference in gender equality experienced by? So it would mean, yes, depending on the context as well, you'd find that they will experience, gender inequality different from probably a Black immigrant, woman. So it is the difference in their identities. I don't know whether I'm making sense, but it's.
I think I can, if I can jump in, on this one. I mean, I think it's really important too, and I know there's people on this call who could speak to this question as well. It's a really good question. I think as we hear more from the voices of Indigenous women in Canada, we're learning more about initiatives like the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women campaigns and the disproportionate impacts of things like domestic violence, like incarceration in Canada, like other scenarios where there's clear inequalities in how Indigenous women in particular experience those situations. So I would point you to organizations like the Native Women's Association of Canada for some really helpful information about that. And to also just encourage you, because it is such a good question, not just in terms of Indigenous women women's experiences, but also Indigenous experiences in general in Canada and in many other ways through things like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action. I would just encourage you to continue that conversation, because especially in our Canadian context, as we did land acknowledgements earlier, it's such an important piece of how we respond as folks who live on this land, on Turtle Island. And I would encourage you to continue to seek out the answers to those questions, in particular, listening to Indigenous voices. And if there's anyone else who wants to add to that, please feel free. That's just what I would add in this conversation.
Well, if we're doing like a streaming back to previous series, I think it was Noah and Shaviet of Canmore who were mentioning intersectionality at one of our previous events. They typed that in, and how that creates different sort of experiences of your world. And I think this is a good example where it's not just about being a woman or a man, and it's about being Indigenous, or it's about being able-bodied, or it's about experiencing poverty or hunger. Like it's your matrix, all those little things that you can check off, and how they all intersect and create layers of how you approach the world and how the world approaches you. So thank you so much for that question. There was another about the law in the US that bans trans children from playing team sports that aligns with their preferred gender. I'm wondering, is that an issue in Canada, or to talk to that issue? Or I mean, I know I followed that legislation with interest. What Blessing, what was your response to seeing that case come through?
I was on mute. Okay, so like I said, you know, in Canada, I know that there is the, you know, respecting of you know, choice of people's choices, and I have not had it as an issue in Canada, so I don't know, unless others have different kind of site, but yeah.
This kind of links into Ms. Patel's question from her class. If we know of any laws that help trans and non-binary folk. I mean, it'd be interesting too if someone from Turkey wants to, in the chat, say what it's like for transgender and non-binary peoples in their country, and if there are laws that support or laws that discriminate. Because I know that there's lots going on in the Czech Republic and Ukraine, and they're quite close to Turkey in that sort of sphere. But Lisa, I know we're sort of going into your time here, so maybe I'll throw this question over to you, and then I'll have Thomas officially introduce you right after. But Lisa, would you know? I don't know. What are your reactions to these first few questions?
Yeah, I would say I don't know the laws in Canada, so I'm not sure exactly what laws there are around this in Canada exactly. So can't add too much to that.
There'll be lots more questions, and I see there are some already. Thomas, I'd love to throw it over to you to welcome Lisa officially.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for these questions. They're very thoughtful. I'd like to introduce Lisa to you. Lisa is the founder of the higher education training for teachers that works to provide capacity building and training for educators in Myanmar, and has done quite a bit of work in that context in the past. And currently she works with the YWCA. And as I have gotten to know Lisa, I've learned that she's very passionate about international development and gender equality. And she was also a top 30 under 30 and is part of the top 30 under 30 alum with ACGC. And now she lives in Grand Prairie. So Lisa, I'll turn it over to you. And thank you for being here, and excited to hear a bit more about your story and your passions in this light.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Thomas. So I'm just going to share my screen. I stole your template for my PowerPoint. So I'll try to go over this pretty quickly because I know we don't have a huge amount of time, but I just thought I would kind of introduce myself, maybe introduce some of the things that I'm passionate about, and a little bit how it relates to gender equality. And also, I just kind of, with mentioning about myself, I was born in Mackenzie, BC. And if anyone knows Mackenzie, it's a very small town. So I do just want to kind of share that even though I was born in a small town, and I also, like, I moved to Slave Lake, Alberta when I was 17, I still kind of became involved with kind of international development, and gender, even though, like, I would say as a teenager, that was not something I was thinking about at all. It was just through my own experiences. So I guess I kind of wanted to mention that, or throw that out to everyone, in that even if you're not involved now, or you don't know a lot about it, you can, like, everyone can become involved. Everyone can kind of have an impact in their own small way. So you don't have to feel like you have to, I don't know, like, anyone can kind of have an impact, like I said. Just to kind of talk about how I became interested in international or sustainable development. When I graduated university, I moved to Thailand to teach English. And from there, I ended up volunteering for a foundation called the Foundation for Education and Development, FED. And FED worked with migrant workers and refugees from Myanmar that moved to Thailand for jobs or to get away from the civil war. So that was kind of my first introduction to international development, human rights abuses, and kind of the situation that was both happening in Myanmar and for migrant workers in Thailand. And it kind of shocked me a lot. So that's what made me interested in working in international development or human rights or working for nonprofits, that type of thing. Is it just seeing the situation and how bad it was for them made me really passionate about it. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly ask in the chat if anyone knows where Myanmar is, just because Myanmar is a country that I am passionate about, and I do know that a lot of people don't really know a lot about it. Okay, so we have one person who says in Southeast Asia. Yes, definitely. Okay, so here is just kind of a map of where it is. So it's beside Thailand, China, and India, and Bangladesh. So you can kind of see that it's in the middle between those countries. And it has one of the longest running civil wars. And you end up with a lot of refugees, both in Bangladesh and along the Thai-Myanmar border. So because of the different conflicts between the different ethnic groups, you can see a lot of the different ethnic groups here, and then with the military. So there's been a lot of issues with the military and the different ethnic groups in the area. So I just wanted to kind of show a map of where it is before I move on, as it is where I'm kind of passionate about. So kind of how I became involved, as I mentioned, seeing kind of like the human rights abuses while I was volunteering made me more passionate about international development and the situation in Myanmar. So then I ended up studying about international development in Bangkok, in Thailand. Oh, let's see if I can go back. As you can see here, Thailand or Bangkok is right beside, or it's kind of the nearest kind of larger, a bit more developed country beside Myanmar. Oh. Okay. So afterwards, I ended up teaching for, I think, 7 or 8 months for the Karen Refugee Committee Education Entity. So this is along the Thai-Myanmar border. And this was a program for young adult refugees and migrants that wanted to work for NGOs and nonprofits in Myanmar or along the Thai-Myanmar border, either in the refugee camps or in kind of Karen state where there was kind of conflict. Okay. And after that, I ended up going and working for a nonprofit organization within Myanmar called MOTU Education. And this organization focuses on adult education, but they focus on adult education, like teacher training or training of facilitators. And through this, they focus on mostly teachers who teach civic education, although they do general teacher training. So as part of this, I taught at Jiaosei Technological University, offering teacher training and research writing and research skills to the university instructors. And I have some photos of that down below. I also, as part of this organization, offered shorter term workshops at conferences or presentations at conferences, universities, post-secondary institutions within Myanmar. Obviously, compared to Canada, international sustainable development is a lot larger of an issue, just because their country is, they aren't as developed as Canada, and they have a lot of issues still because of the conflict, because of human rights abuses. So with COVID-19, I ended up coming back to Canada. And then what I ended up doing is I started as just like a side, like a very small side project, where I still was connected to a lot of the university instructors or university professors in Myanmar. And they were asking me for classes still, even though I wasn't in Myanmar. So I started off just offering some virtual classes online. And then it kind of expanded from there. So there was a huge amount of interest, a lot more than I was expecting, to be honest. So we were offering virtual classes and workshops to university instructors or university professors in teacher training, so adult education, like how to teach. A lot of them had never been trained in any like teaching skills. So they only lectured, they knew nothing about, like they knew their topic, but they knew nothing about teaching. So we were trying to give them some ideas around how to teach, how to better teach their students, because education, the quality of education in Myanmar is quite low, it's very low. And there was no other really programs or organizations offering teacher training to the university professors. Also academic and research writing skills. They have to do all their academic and research writing in English, but for a lot of them, English wasn't their first language and they were really struggling. As well as we offered general English classes to improve their English. And it really did help a lot. In that I was getting a lot of comments that with COVID and everything moving virtual, it meant that they were able to understand experts and other people from other countries when they came to present, or like they were able to communicate with experts in their field from other countries, and it really gave them that global perspective. So we had over 100 volunteers helping with either the teaching, the training, or the organizing of what we were doing. And we were working, or we had university teachers or university professors from over 40 different universities. And a lot of that was just from word of mouth. Like this wasn't something that I went into like, oh, I want to make this something really big. It would just ended up kind of growing bigger because there was that interest in these courses. So they were interested in the teacher training, the academic research writing, and the English classes. And we started these in English because I started these, and then I brought someone in, and we were also offering them in Burmese as well, so that they had the option of English or Burmese for the workshops. I will say that last year, though, we did kind of have to stop for the most part. There's still a little bit going on, but not as much as it was. And this is because there was a coup in Myanmar last February. And with the coup, the internet kind of was down for a while. Like we were trying to offer workshops and classes still, but just no one was really able to connect. They were having to use VPNs, like the phone connection was off at nighttime, the internet connection was off for a while. Like it was just really, really hard to continue offering things virtually. So we've done a few workshops since then, but not in the way that we were doing before that. So we were offering a lot, and it hasn't been as much since then. I will say we have done some workshops with the National Union government, which is the government that we did a MOODLE workshop with them that has went into place. It's not the military government, but when the elected government was ousted because of the coup, they formed a separate government when the military took over, saying that we are the legitimate government. And so they've set up their own support for teachers. So I have offered some MOODLE training and LMS training for them, but we haven't been doing as much lately as we were doing before the coup, just because it's hard with the internet. What else? So I just wanted to touch a little bit on how it ties in with gender equality. So obviously, as Myanmar is still a developing country, it has huge issues around gender inequality. So I will say more and more women are interested in post-secondary school. And with the coup, this has kind of messed with it a little bit because teachers went on strike, universities haven't been really running in the same way. So, but before the coup, before COVID, more and more women were getting interested in post-secondary school as a way to get out of poverty, but there was still limitations on this, as many of the job advertisements were asking only for men. So women would get the education, and sometimes they would still get blocked just by being a woman. So I will say with what we were offering, with the teacher training courses, we had so many women interested in improving their skills. It was, I would say, I think it was 90% women that were interested. They were the ones that were motivated and interested in improving their skills, improving their teaching skills, improving their research skills. And also as part of that, we offered some workshops or short workshops, classes on like gender equality in the classroom, as well as, we talked about non-binary issues. So on LGBTQ issues in the classroom, because being LGBTQ plus is still illegal in Myanmar, although it's not really frowned upon. And we also, or I specifically, also a couple of times offered self-care workshops in combination with a feminist group in Myanmar, feminist groups in Myanmar. So I'm very much a feminist, and I believe that gender equality is something that is very, very, very important. Okay. And just more generally, especially since the coup, since COVID, some gender issues that have shown up in Myanmar are around kind of healthy pregnancies. This has been a huge issue between COVID and the doctors being like stressed out and nurses being stressed out, and a coup where by the military in the country where doctors went on strike. So there hasn't been as much, there hasn't been as many doctors working or healthcare workers working, which has stressed a lot of women out because they don't have access to proper healthcare if they get pregnant, which is leading to a lot of healthcare, like pregnancy issues. Gender-based violence, obviously, as mentioned, during COVID-19, gender-based violence has increased. So between COVID-19 and there being a coup by a military, gender-based violence in the country has increased a lot. Sexual assault. So with the coup and the military taking over, the military, there's both sexual assault itself and the fear of sexual assault. So even if women haven't been sexually assaulted themselves, they are scared about being sexually assaulted by the military or just in general, because there isn't the support right now against sexual assault. And tied in with that is mental health. So part of that is the fear of, say, like gender-based violence, sexual assault, pregnancies. Obviously, having all of those issues to deal with leads to decreased mental health, as well as just overall like COVID-19 and the coup in the country. I will say just some really positive or funny gender-based things that I have seen in Myanmar or heard about is that I heard in Myanmar that men think that women's underwear is like beneath them, so they won't walk under women's underwear. And so I know during the coup, when there was protests, people were protesting against the military taking over. Some of the women would do things like string out their bras and underwear across the street as a way to stop the military in a peaceful way, because the military would not want to walk under the bras and underwear. So part of it is playing into the sexism, but also noticing that it's there and trying to maybe like work against it, because the women themselves had nothing against that. The protesters had nothing against it. It was just the sexist military that was not okay with that. And many of the protesters against the coup were women. It was huge amounts of it were women led. A lot of Gen Z, so 20, maybe 18 to 25-year-old women were leading the protest against the military. I wasn't involved in it, but some of the people I know were. And so I really think that's kind of amazing. Also, trying to be kind of quick, so my apologies.
Yeah, we're just at the time for ending our session, and I wanted to be able to ask a couple of questions. Would it be, we could leave the slide up, or they might be able to find more information, or if there's one last point you needed to make before we transition into a question, that would be amazing.
Okay, yeah, this was actually my last point, so okay. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So in case anyone is interested about gender issues, it's I did one of the self-care workshops with Nandar, and Nandar runs a feminist group in Myanmar. So if anyone is more passionate about learning about what feminism or gender equality might be like in a different country, I would just recommend checking out her podcast, because it is very interesting. So it's called Feminist Talks with Nandar. So if you are Canadian and you just haven't really kind of seen what it's like in other countries, it is in English, and I just wanted to recommend checking it out because she does a lot of really interesting work. And I did a self-care workshop with her before. I ran a self-care workshop for her. And that was kind of my last point, and I just wanted to ask if there was any questions. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing about your experiences. It's so interesting to hear what's going on and the needs and how it's differing between countries. And and I think someone might have unmuted to ask a question, so we're totally up for that as well. Or you can raise your hand, you can type in the chat. There was one earlier about opportunities for youth to get involved, and it was mostly about, like, the Blessing had listed a few policies, and wondering, like, what is the youth voice in these policies, or how do you find out how to get involved in working with, which is, I think, such a great lens to go in, because it's not how do I start something all on my own, but how do I contribute to work that's already being done in my country? So how, maybe Thomas or Lisa or Blessing, how do youth find out about ways to contribute to the work that's already being done?
I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to find out. Like, honestly, like I don't have anything up right this second. And like I said, we're doing a bit less right now. When we were more involved, I could say, like, oh, you can come help with like what we're doing and volunteer. But I would say just a lot of, so for Myanmar, there's a lot of need for funds, as well as like just volunteering. If you can support English classes, if you're fluent in English, there's so many Burmese people that would like to improve their English skills. So I feel like as a youth, that's probably the easiest way. The other way is to fundraise money. So Myanmar right now, if youth want to become involved, Myanmar right now with the coup, they need a lot of financial support. A lot of the groups need a lot of financial support. So just fundraising money to support the groups that are working on the ground because there already is so many in Myanmar, like Burmese run groups that are doing a lot of really amazing work, but they just don't have the funds. Like there's just not any money to kind of run those kind of programs. And like some of my students are like, yeah, I live on $50 a month. So they just don't have the funds to always put in the work that is needed. So my biggest thing would be like trying to fundraise to support those groups. And a lot of them you can find online. I have connections to some of them. So if people do want more connections, I can share some of the names of some of those groups. Yeah.
And I'll just add really briefly, if you are interested or passionate about gender equality, look up whatever organization is doing this work in your own community, and I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. There are also, in terms of government involvement and other sorts of things, there are really great organizations like Apathy is Boring, doing some excellent work. There are youth advisory committees as well. So perhaps it's a great question, and there's lots of resources out there, and probably not as many opportunities as we would always want to see. But I think maybe what we would do is send out some of that information post this meeting so that folks can have access to it. There are some really, great ways to get involved, and many different types of ways for whatever the interest is.
Yeah, I just want to add just a quick one as well, just to add on what Thomas has said. And one of the other ways, that you could also participate in, especially during this time that we are on the 16 days of activism, which ends on the 10th of December, a quick and easy way, you just follow some of the hashtags of the organizations and, government's efforts around raising awareness and, do your bit. That's just one quick, easy and quick way to follow the conversation and do your bit.
And I think, Thomas, another great way is if they join us next week. We are going to be doing during the week, so during lunch hours, afternoons, evenings, we're going to have an opportunity for students from around Alberta to come together and sort of bring together. We've been doing Google Docs, we've been doing Google Forms, we've had a few different ways of collecting what your thoughts on passions are around the SDGs and what your barriers are to doing action now in this sort of COVID-y, pre, post, mid, who knows, COVID time. What do you need to help get out there, inspiring other youth and making action and all that? And so if you're interested, please reach out to me. I know I've already heard from a few students. I would love to bring some more in to help us next week. It'll be based on the times that you're available. So I'm going to be sending out more emails to teachers about that. But if you are of interest to this, please flag yourself to your teacher and be like, I'd love to contribute to this document. These words, your words, are going to make an impact. And this is your chance to be heard about your needs directly, not through me, not through Thomas, not through Blessing or Lisa, but from you directly. And so we would love to help you get that shared in a meaningful and important, impactful way. There's chances after the writing in the spring to present at conferences with decision makers. And we want to help you do that. And so this is an amazing opportunity to have your voice heard, but also to think about, is this a field of work I could get into? Is this something that I can see myself doing? How do I make change? I want to make change now. You don't have to wait till you're old like Thomas and I. Thomas is not as old as me, but still, he's still youth. But you don't have to wait till you're working. You can make change now, and we want to help you do that. So reach out to me by email or through your teacher. We would love to have you join us next week. Okay, Thomas, anything last to add before the end of our final in this series? It was so wonderful.
Yeah, no, that was a great spot to end off. Please join us. We'd love to have you involved in the writing project and the report. And there's lots of great ideas in this space. And really excited for what's to come. Thank you to everyone who spent time with us on the screen today. Thank you to Blessing, to Lisa for presenting, and to each of you for the questions. And even if we didn't get to all of your questions, please keep asking them. Please keep having these conversations in your communities, in your schools. That's how change happens. It happens when we start to talk about things. So thanks so much. And all the best to you where you are.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
No one, Shabby. I sent an email to your mom, so make sure she checks it. And to all of the other teachers as well, I have been reaching out by email about the writing and would love to hear back from you. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day.